Hey everyone. So we're a couple minutes late. I'm Wayne, this is Amanda, and we might have William joining as well. And today we have a really important subject that we're going to go through, which is how do we assemble the build teams that take our designs, take our development approach, and execute on site? And what is our evaluation method? What sort of processes do we go through to put together the best possible team for your project and your location and your time frame and your budget? Before anything in any huts project, whether we have a client or not, or we're just looking at areas to work, one of the things that we recognize is that home designs are only as good as their ability to be executed. It really does you no good and us no good to have designed a house for a location and really have nobody on the other side to help us execute on it. And so we spend an enormous amount of time researching general contractors, build partners, both on the groundwork side, but particularly on the construction side. And here you can see one of our kind of core service areas in the Catskills and Hudson Valley and getting into the Berkshires in Massachusetts, where all of our build partners that we've vetted and evaluated are located geographically across this region. And why this matters is that when we first start talking to potential HUTS clients and they tell us, hey, I'm thinking about a project near Livingston Manor or a project near Red Hook, in our mind right away, we're automatically thinking about way before there's a design, way before there's a time frame, way before there's a budget. Who are the folks that we know of that are going to be part of our network who could fit that project? And so you can see that here where our build partners, both current and potential, start to get matched onto our HUTS clients. And you can see the overlay in that information. And so designing or developing properties or thinking about designing and developing properties is only as good as their ability to be executed. And right up front, we want to make sure that we have real density of partnerships in the areas that we're focusing so that we can bring projects all the way to completion. And so what you'll see in this map is all of these potential partners, we have various information on them, who they are, what their service area is, where they work, and we'll dig into some of how we gather that information. And the way that we do that is here through our kind of general contractors database. And in every area that we work, we have our backlog of contractor partners, both in places where we're actively working or places where we're thinking about working down the line. We spend a lot of this time up front identifying great partners, evaluating their projects, and understanding the types of projects that these contractors are a best fit for, and the types of projects that they have the most fun doing. And I think that this is a really important aspect to it. If they feel way out of their comfort zone, or they feel like it's too small or too large or too far away, we don't want to kind of put anyone into a spot where we're adding extra elements or extra opportunities for the project to get complicated. And so we really want to match the right project to the right partner. And so here you can see we're kind of constantly building onto this list, coming up with ways to tag and identify and organize all of our current and prospective contractor partners.
And that's in not just in New York, but that's in all of the areas where we're currently working and also areas that we are prospectively thinking we'd like to work. We've got projects on the West Coast. We're starting to see a lot more projects in the New England area. We're beginning projects in North Carolina, Tennessee. So each one of those areas is a place that we're kind of building out our network and starting basically as soon as those conversations begin with prospective clients. And so it gives us an opportunity to really be able to vet and understand the conditions of that location well in advance of us even beginning the design project with the client. So each area has a totally different kind of saturation or lack thereof when it comes to contractors and builders. And so it's really helpful for us to understand that before we even get started.
And so, in addition to sourcing these build partners up front and doing it speculatively before we are tying projects to these partners, so we're not kind of scrambling around trying to figure out who might be a good fit. We are also soliciting from all of these contractors key stats so we can kind of build those cards and really treat it as, well, here's a project that is 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, this sizing, this geographical region, this sort of data that is and identifying for that project. And then here's the contractors that have experience working on projects in that area of that build quality, of that price point, with that bank potentially that you're looking to finance with. And then it makes it very easy for us to start to match those because we have kind of alignment and data between project and contractor. And so one of the ways that we collect that data is through what we call sort of our general contractor key stats form. It allows all of our potential build partners to fill out information about their business, things related to their service area, things related to what subs and trades do they have in house, which ones do they sub out, to look at number of projects per year so we can get an understanding of what their bandwidth is and what their availability might be for your project in the near or distant future, making sure that we understand all of their licensing requirements, all of their kind of required professional certifications are in place, anything around awards or recognition that they've received, and to make us familiar with projects that they see as relevant to the types of projects that we do. Amanda, anything else to add about this form?
Yeah, I think it's also a really helpful way for us to understand when their next availability is going to be. So, obviously, we want to make sure that we are not matching our clients with contractors who won't have availability, for a year or two out, especially when we know that that client is really looking to get started within the next 6 months or so. So, location, availability, kind of like size of project, type of project. And then this also gives the contractors a place where they can kind of showcase what they feel is their best work. So links to their Angie's list, links to their house accounts. And it's we kind of look at this almost like as a trading card. And it's a great way too when we're working with our clients to share the information with them up front with about who we consider would be a good match for their project. So yeah, that's kind of our key stats kind of trading card catalog. It's a great way to keep everybody's information in one spot.
So I think that's a good transition going from the general of how do we create our database of vetted partners, folks that we like, that we've seen they've done good work either in collaboration with us or on similar scales of projects. And then how does that start to apply to your project? One of the things that Amanda just mentioned is that as we start to collect general contractors that we think are a good fit, you will also have access to all those key stats. Why do we think that they are a good fit? Why are we sort of putting them up front as being part of the potential shortlist for us to reach out to get an understanding of their interest and availability on the project? And so let's imagine it's your project and we have started a design exercise. We know the geographical region. We have an understanding of who the potential partners could be based on geography, who the potential partners could be based on time frame, who the potential partners could be based on general cost per square foot and their construction methodologies, and some of the vetting based on how much we've worked with them in the past or not. And so after we sort of shortlist and get to, sorry, let me close this. We start working with you on your project. In your project dashboard, not only will it start to bring together everything related to the design and development of your project, but in real time, we'll start to solicit interest from contractors. And all of that will kind of happen in plain view with total transparency to you as the client, as we start to look at all of the partners in the area, providing all of those links to their unique general contractor trading card, and starting to build our short list of who's interested, available, understands the pricing within that is being proposed for your project and the timeline that's being proposed within your project. And so we're kind of constantly building out that list. And a lot of our clients are surprised how early that's happening. But one of the reasons that's able to happen quite early is not only because of all of the work that we've done up front, but for the most part, many of our projects start from our standards, and our standards have some standardized sizing. They have some standardized building science. They have standardized material selections. And so quite early, we're able to distribute pricing materials. So each of the contractors have an understanding preliminarily of what the scope of the project is, and see how it fits within their schedule, interests, their sweet spot on how they build. And quite early, we're able to send out a relatively dense document like this that captures all of the kind of material divisions, captures all of our specifications on finishing carpentry and finishing quality, captures everything related to local code and zoning for this town, along with lays out the vision for what the place should be, um, site planning, sizing, architecturals, structural, all really before we've even got into heavy modifications with the client, under the understanding that, yeah, this is a house that's probably going to hew pretty close to, say, our big L standard. And so here's what it means to price a generic big L standard in this location. And it gets the contractors very, very close to understanding the scope of the project, before even getting them to final construction documentation or final pricing documentation, and allows us to set us on the course to bringing on the contractor early in the design process rather than after the fact when we would have maybe designed for everything and then we go out and try to find a contractor that seems a good fit. In this case, we're going through the design sequence and documentation with one of these vetted partners, kind of at our hip side, to help us vet and evaluate and go through some of the value engineering in real time so that we arrive at the right budget and we arrive at the right timeline rather than being told it after the fact. And so this is sort of the view that you as a client would see in real time. Who are these contractors? What have we sort of done with them? Linking out to their key stats. What has been the last point of communication? What sort of questions do they have? And we're kind of capturing all of that in real time. And then once we get to that short list and say, hey, we've got sort of three folks that we think are hit all of these criteria. They're in the right place, they're at the right price point, right timing. They're on the preferred vendor list for the right bank. We trust them, and we feel really confident in their understanding of the scope of the project. One of the most important things with a construction project is culture fit. And do you enjoy working with the people who are you're paying not insignificant amounts of money and trusting with, for many people, the largest asset that they're going to create in their life? And so doing that with somebody who you don't like that much, you don't feel that comfortable with, is absolutely not a recipe for success. And so we're really keen on making sure that both the contractor and the clients and us have an opportunity to meet in person, or at least kind of have a kind of detailed call together, and get to know each other, because there's going to be a relationship that happens throughout the construction process over the next 6 to 9 months, where there's real legal documents, there's real money flying around, there's real dirt flying around, and you want to do that with people you trust and enjoy their company. For us, we really focus on getting out on site with the client, with the team, making sure everyone understands what's going on and feels similarly confident in taking what is documented in digital and paper materials and bringing it into fruition out in wherever it might be. And sometimes it's pretty intimidating looking sites, 100-acre parcels with rock outcroppings, places that are heavily wooded, and that translation from the design intent and the pricing expectations into a real house really starts here on site, as we're in this case seemingly looking longingly into the distance. But always always
We're
always
not usually standing around in what looks to be a seance,
yeah.
but sometimes we do.
Sometimes we are. And so after that, we've kind of gone from, if you think about this process as a bit of a funnel, we've gone from every contractor we've ever looked at, uh,
Mhm.
anywhere. The contractors that we deem sort of valuable to kind of put into trading card format that we would be comfortable potentially attaching them to a project. Then the contractors that are interested in this project, the contractors that we've shortlisted based on their availability and pricing alignment, the contractors we've met with on site or through a call, and then one of them we want to get to what's called a pre-construction agreement. And so you may have heard different ideas out there around how do you engage with a contractor or how do you go from design to construction. And so one of the typical methods that is out there is called design, bid, build. And this is something that we're often fighting against because we don't think it works very well, where you design a whole house, nobody really knows the pricing of it. The designers like it, the client likes it, the town likes it, it's permitted. Great. Let's go out and bid it out to contractors and hopefully they come back with the right price. The truth is they never do. The price is too high, the price is unvetted, it's not comprehensive because the contractor hasn't been involved along the way, and they don't really understand the boundary of the project. One of the other methods is sort of design build, where the contractor and the designer are the same person. In this case, one of the issues that you get into is that it's about sort of accelerating with speed and sort of designing some pieces as you build, but it also means that the client has very little understanding of what the total project might be. And so we're trying to find this best of both worlds where the client knows the boundary of the project, the contractor knows the boundary of the project, and we're arriving at a fixed price at the end of the project where everyone knows the whole pieces of it. Any expensive pieces or things that fall out of budget can be sort of removed as we go through the design sequence and not after permitting and not after design is complete. And that we've used some of this pre-construction period to get to know each other, which I think is a really helpful piece of this. And so, so much of our contractor sourcing process, and I would say even the utilization of standards, is about taking the best things from design, bid, build, which to me is about getting to fixed pricing, and the best pieces of design, build, which is a close relationship between design and construction, and removing some of the less beneficial parts to the client of both of those processes. And so we solicit kind of the from the sort of chosen shortlisted contractor a pre-construction agreement. And this is a agreement that takes one of several formats, but it kind of brings the contractor onto our team while we're still in design, we're still in documentation, and the client and the GC will enter into a formal agreement of services. It'll either be an hourly cost or maybe it's a fixed fee. It's almost always any monies spent during this period are almost always credited back if we go forward with that contractor for construction. It's a time when they're really diving into pricing, constructability, offering ideas for any alternatives based on local resources that they may have, or for instance, maybe they have a relationship with a different trust company than we're proposing to use, and they're able to secure 25% discount on their framing costs because of that. That's something we're able to uncover early in the design process and make sure that it gets reflected into the documentation. They're starting to pull together the entirety of the material schedule and pricing schedule. So again, we're able to itemize all of the elements and respond to any information that they have. So we don't end up with a bid from a contractor that has a bunch of sort of hand wavy allowances. It's real pricing on everything that we're sort of is matching up with the final pricing and construction documentation.
Yeah, and I would add that it really one of our biggest objectives is to we recognize that there's a major pain point in a lot of projects traditionally where you're kind of the design and the construction's sort of at odds. And this is the way to form a relationship with a contractor at a very early stage, bring them in as part of the team to become part of your development team and really kind of bring everybody on the same page super early so that everybody's always working towards the same objective and not against one another, which is, I think, a lot of people come in with the fear of like, I've heard that it's really hard to find a contractor. I've heard that contractors are really difficult to work with. Those things are just not true if you are going to be approaching it in a way that brings the contractor in as part of the design team basically really early on. And I mean, we just have seen such a smooth way of transitioning from our services into the contractor services actually on site by creating these partnerships early on. So the pre-con agreement is just the formalization of that partnership that really kind of locks it in, and it helps you along the way with understanding that you really do have a true partner that understands the full focus of the project. So for us, it's kind of like it's a must to move into a pre-con with a contractor pretty early on.
And so some of the things that the contractors receiving to help them evaluate the project, along with engaging directly with our studio team and fielding questions that they may have of us, that they may have of the clients. Of course, they're seeing the kind of full and finalized pricing documentation for the house, a very detailed and well specified materials. But then also getting into what is the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing system, what is the placement for each of these? What is the specification for each of those items? The entirety of the lighting schedule. And they're also getting the full fixtures and finishes schedule from our interiors process. So they don't have kind of again, sort of like a hand wavy allowance on what is the cabinet pricing going to be and what's the install pricing going to be. At this point, we're going to know exactly what the real pricing on these fixtures and finishes are, and they're going to be able to put real pricing for installation of these real objects. As they're during this pre-construction agreement, the what we're working towards is a fixed contract with the contractor, and to get there, we want to know every sort of piece is accounted for in the contract. And so every general contractor has their own format of how they submit bids. Pretty, we've seen really loose spreadsheets, we've seen big round numbers, we've seen 50-page long Excel documents, all kinds of ways. And one of our goals is to reconcile the contractor bid into a more easily digestible format. And that's what you're seeing here, which is live in a real client's project dashboard. And so this allows us to do a couple of things. If we do have multiple contractors soliciting bids, we're able to compare apples to apples, and see how one compares line item by line item to another. It also allows us to break out the relevant pieces, both according to phase of work during construction, whether it's general conditions or land improvement or foundations or framing or roofing. But then also, what are the elements of it between building costs, labor costs, and in some cases, in almost most cases, we're working with our clients on owner supplied elements, particularly on interior finishes and fixtures. And so getting real numbers for all of those plumbing fixtures and lighting fixtures, and having all of those pieces in one spot. And it allows us to document when there are upgrades that are chosen by the client and places where there are savings. So we're able to reconcile before construction and during construction places where we want to try to shave some cost. Or if the client says, hey, I've been thinking a lot about this. I know we're already in construction. I want to go from Caesar stone to this granite, and I know it's sort of an upgrade. And so rather than it being an endless trail of change orders that happen sort of haphazardly from the contractor, everything's sort of updated in our sheet here in real time. So we're getting real pricing that is kind of fully accounted for across a pretty easy to understand format. And so where have we gone here? We've gone from every contractor in the world to the contractors in your area, to the contractors that we like in your area that we think are a good fit for your project, to the contractors that are ready and available in your time frame to deliver at the price point that we've identified, to the ones that you've discussed the project with and like their vibe and enjoy
Mhm.
talking through the project with, to the contractor that we've engaged in a pre-construction agreement, through to the kind of contractor developing with us a finalized fixed bid on the project. And then you're really at that point where design's done, bank financing materials are done, contractors engaged, and then you're going to start construction. And because we've sort of formed this relationship with the builder, we are confident in the scope and completion of the bid. And there's really kind of a three-part group here between Huts as your designer and developer, contractor as on site for construction, and then you as the client. We're able to move into construction, and so at that point, we tend to play this role of owner's representation, helping to represent the project on site, and both helping to smooth the communication between contractor and client, contractor and bank, and also to be there for quality control that the milestones are getting hit as laid out. And so we kind of organize all of the kind of key phases of work and are able to sort of move them along the path and say, great, site work, where does that stand? It's in process. What are the things within site work that we need to have happen at what date? How are we storing photographic documentation or aerial imagery to show the progress of that piece? And so whether you're nearby on site or like many of our clients, they don't live full time near where the house is being built, they're getting a real time pulse on what's happening in the project, and staying with that same theme of complete transparency and total documentation of exactly what's happening when. And the end result is, when it goes well, is a really fantastic house that hits all of the marks. But forging this relationship and the way that we go about, again, I think finding the best parts of design build and design bid build in various areas across the country, I think is one of our major value propositions. And it's something people don't think about all the time. I think that the expectation is, oh, well, I designed a house or I have plans, I can go out and get it built. And I think we've found time and again that design plans only get you so far. It's really about how do you really develop the property, and we've seen that that is a team sport. And how do we help to be both kind of player and coach in organizing that team to successfully deliver on it? And so I think maybe I'll stop here at bring us back to Hut's world, and open it up for Q&A. And so if anyone out there that has a question, please just type it into the Q&A field and we'll answer it as best we can. And while we wait for some to flow in, Amanda, anything else you think we should add here?
So some questions that we are asked pretty frequently is, how long does it take? If I buy land today, how long until my house is built? And annoyingly, we always have to answer the same way. It depends. And it depends because the condition of the land is such a major factor. If you're buying a parcel that has all the improvements already, or maybe it even has accessibility to municipal utilities, like you can just hook right into town water, sewer, etc. That's going to make it so much easier and faster in sort of in the timeline of building. Most of the projects that we're working on are definitely not in that type of condition. We're working with a lot of land that's very raw, very rural, and so it takes a good bit of time to actually go through the process of getting that land build ready. And then the second piece of it in terms of timeline is availability of contractors. So as you can see, we have great relationships all over the place, but contractors can only take on so many projects at once. So, we need to make sure that as we're kind of looking at the timeline of your project, we're being realistic as to how many available contractors there may be, when they may be available to start, et cetera. And those are going to always be huge factors in how long your overall project is going to take. So unfortunately, there's never going to be like a clear cut exact amount of time for how long each project takes, because it really does depend on those two big factors: is condition of the land, availability of contractors, and also kind of how how you're looking at financing things as well. Because if you're planning to do bank financing, then that's factored in as well. It does take a little bit of time to get all that paperwork together. So That's a definitely a frequently asked question is how long is this going to take? And it's just not possible to actually answer that broadly.
I think to piggyback off of that, I do know that the slowest version of doing it is designing the entirety of the house and then being done and saying, "Oh, I'm sure someone's ready to start building tomorrow." And that's never the case. And so by trying to overlap design with onboarding the build team and utilizing our kind of pre-construction approach, we have the highest likelihood that at the moment of submitting permits, we also have a builder ready to go who's wants to move on to the next steps. I know that if you go the other way and design, permit, and just assume somebody's there, they are absolutely not there.
We have a question from Ben. Ben says, great presentation. Thanks, Ben. Very interested. What are all the buckets of costs when working with you?
Yeah, and so Ben, our scopes of work from Huts are in kind of five buckets. Generally, land sourcing is a bucket of work. The next is land improvement and site planning. That's a set of effort. The next is design and sort of modifying one of our standards for your lot and lifestyle, local conditions, and identifying and taking inventory of all plumbing and mechanical systems, along with all fixtures and finishes. The fourth is going to be around documentation, the production of permit, construction documentation, and bank financing materials as required. And the last, but actually kind of starts right from the beginning, as we're showing here, is build team assembly and organizing the builder. And so you can see those phases of work if you go to huts.com, go to the studio, and there's kind of a page there that kind of goes through in detail everything that we do. And everything that we do listed there maps on one to one to exactly how our contracts and our fee agreements are organized. And one thing that you'll notice is that our contracts tend to be people often remark that they look kind of like dim sum menus, and that's by design. It should be that we're sort of doing the things that we need to do and no more based on where you currently are in your project. And the way that we work on those pieces is through an hourly range for the things that we need to deliver. And as both home designers and home developers, we really want to make sure that we stay very aligned with your objectives and really have no exposure to the cost of construction. One of the things that's prevalent in the architecture, engineering, and construction trade is that all of the folks that you're involved with, they are incentivized to get you to spend as much as possible because they make their money as a percentage of what you spend. For us, we don't, and I think that that makes it so that have the right goals, which is we want to see the houses happen. We don't want to just get the services to happen. And what behooves us is that our methodology of delivering beautifully designed contextual homes works all over the place. And the way that we're able to show that is that houses actually are coming out of the ground.
If you haven't already, let's set up a time to talk one on one. We'd love to go through our scope of work with you and to just kind of share what all of those phases look like and what all the deliverables are. So if you haven't already set up a time to chat, please do so. You can email us directly at amanda@huts.com or wayne@huts.com, and we will look forward to hopefully meeting with you one on one to talk through what your goals might be. So Jean says, hey guys, hey Jean, question with financing in mind. Knowing that most banks will give 12 months to finish the house and knowing that we are paying interest for the first year, what happens if the house isn't finished after the 12-month period?
That's a good question, Gene. The sometimes that happens. It's not that typical that once you start actually breaking ground and drawing against it, that the house is going to take longer than 12 months. And so we don't run into it a lot. But we do have a project right now where the 12-month period is coming up, and the bank actually reached out to the client and said, "Hey, we want to extend this for the next year for a nominal fee. It's like $200 or so." And so that's quite typical that the bank wants to keep that construction period open. They also want to make sure that the house gets to being a collateralizable asset They don't really want to have a project that's half done somewhere. So they're usually going to be pretty forthright about making sure that construction gets done, even if it means it's being extended somewhat. What usually happens is a small fee to extend in 3 or 6 or 12 month timeframes.
If there is ever a time where you do have questions that may come up later, or as you're getting a little bit closer to thinking about your own project, there is a button on our website that says Get Started. And you can just simply fill out a couple of questions there, generally around like where you're looking to build a house, where you're looking to build a property, how large of a house are you interested in, and that information will be sent to us directly, and then we'll go ahead and reach out to set up a time to chat with you. So that's a really good way to get in touch with us, and we're really more than happy to be a resource for anybody that does have questions about this process, because it is a difficult and daunting process to develop property and to build a house. And that's exactly why we started Huts. So we're really more than happy to discuss any of the things that you find are overwhelming, because those are all the pain points that we've addressed in how we've been developing this company and how we approach every single one of our projects. So thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.